Have you ever heard someone scream in the dark, as if they were being called for something no one else could see? It wasn't just any scream. It wasn't physical pain. It was pure panic, as if an invisible presence were lurking, waiting for the exact moment to drag someone, not to death, but to something much deeper and much darker. He's here. He's been waiting for me all this time. That was the last sentence of a death row inmate seconds before he fell to his knees in cell 9B. His scream echoed through the corridors, cutting through the silence like a sharp blade through flesh. And the scariest thing? No guard dared to enter. That night, the security cameras recorded a sequence that is still treated with silence and discomfort today. The inmate stared at the ceiling for more than 2 hours. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just stared, as if he were being watched by something beyond the walls, beyond human eyes. The cell grew freezing. The air became thick, almost unbreathable, and the guards retreated. Have you ever felt this? That feeling that someone is around, even when no one is there? This man, convicted of crimes that stained the pages of newspapers, did not ask for forgiveness. He did not beg for clemency. He only repeated, "He waited for me. He is ready now. I know what is coming." But who was he? The devil? Death? Guilt itself taking shape? What haunts a man on death row when there is nothing left to lose or hope for? The most disturbing thing wasn't what he said. He was what he saw. The expression on his face. The cold sweat dripping down even though the cell was freezing. The way he flinched as if he saw a creature that human eyes couldn't decipher. Was hell calling him? Or was it always inside him? Stories like this are not unique. There are archives, reports, muffled recordings that never reach the public, but which circulate in whispers among employees of maximum security prisons. Presences, voices, figures, inmates who speak to something invisible days before execution. Some whisper names. Others simply freeze, and there are those who smile, as if they are finally reunited. Somebody. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover now might surprise you. Cases like these reveal much more than psychology or superstition. They reveal what the human being carried when the soul already knows that it will not return. Maybe hell is not a place. Maybe he is a presence. One that waits, one that watches, and one that appears but in the end. And that was just the beginning. Because what comes next, it's even darker. And he wasn't the only one. Months later, another convict, different prisons, different crimes, asked the same thing. Leave the light on at night. The warden laughed. The guards scoffed. But on the second morning at 3:23 a.m., the cameras showed the man sitting still, staring into the dark corner of the cell, smiling, crying, talking to someone no one saw. Or maybe only he could see it. They called it madness, of collapse. But what if it's more than that? Have you ever felt that presence? That feeling that is there something there, even when everything is silent? Something that doesn't belong here? If this spoke to you in any way, leave in the comments what has affected you the most so far. Because when you share, you don't just lift a weight. You shine a light for those who are also walking blindly. And if this story chilled you to the core, click like. It's not about numbers. It's by reach. Someone, somewhere needs to hear this. And you make it happen. If you feel you need to understand more, go deeper, subscribe here to the channel. It is this connection that keeps these truths alive, being told, being felt. Because what comes next, it's not superstition, it's not delusion. It is record. And it will shake up everything you thought was real. His body was shaking even under heavy blankets. It wasn't cold. It was something else. Something that came from within. As if his soul was contracting, trying to escape something only he could see. He was convicted of a brutal crime. No one there had any compassion. No tears were shed for him. No visits, no pleas. Just the unbearable ticking of an invisible countdown until the final moment. But something has changed in the last 7 days. The cell seemed to have a life of its own. The guards reported that he stopped sleeping. He wouldn't walk barefoot. He said the floor was burning and that he could hear something crawling underneath. He whispered to be moved, saying that the energy in the place was wrong, that someone had come in, and it wasn't human. On the 4th day, he refused food. On the 5th, he pulled out his nails in despair. On the 6th, he was bleeding from his ears and said it was the price. Last night, he left just one request: close my eyes quickly. He promised he would look inside me. He who? This sentence echoed in the hallway like a curse. 2 prison guards resigned after that night. One of them started going to church every day, even though he had never been religious. He said, in an informal statement, that this was stuck in the convict's eyes. And what he saw for a second, before they turned off the lights, was something leaning against the wall, like an ownerless shadow. This type of report is not isolated. There is a pattern, as if on the eve of death something approaches, something that waits, something that watches. These stories are repeated in different states, prisons, and cultures, from Alabama to old prisons in Mexico to institutions that don't even appear on official maps. Inmates report the same type of presence: figures in the corners, voices that don't come from the hallway, a pressure in the chest, the feeling that someone came in without going through the door. We are not talking about faith, nor urban legend. This comes from documents, letters from employees, audio recordings, and images that have never been officially released. The pattern doesn't stop at the reports. Many of these men committed crimes with obscure motivations, crimes with no apparent logic, as if they were driven by something external, an irrational impulse that they could not explain. During interrogations, some said they had listened to orders. Others said their bodies acted on their own. Some people call it delirium, terminal psychosis, but there are too many details, too many coincidences, dates that repeat themselves, specific months with peaks in reports, places where the prison architecture seems to pull a strange energy. And when you start connecting the dots, you realize that these are not just cases. It's a pattern, an invisible journey that begins long before execution. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what these inmates saw and feared perhaps says more about what exists on this side than on the other side. When a mind is about to black out, what is real and what is hallucination become mixed together. But what if the threshold between the two worlds is thinner than we imagine? What if this look that promised to enter is not symbolic? What if there really is something watching us, patiently, waiting for the last flame of consciousness to go out so that you can finally enter? Comment here. That makes sense to me. Let's see how many people here also feel that there is something more to this story. They started slowly. Short whispers, interspersed with dense silences. At first, the guards thought they were just losing their minds, pressure, guilt, isolation. But it soon became clear it was something else. It wasn't delirium. It was dialogue. They were talking to someone. In completely empty cells, with no windows, no visitors, no echo. Some seemed to be talking as if they were in a bar. Others were mumbling between sobs, an emotional, intimate, disturbing exchange. One of the most notable cases took place in a state prison in Tennessee. Sentenced to death for triple homicide, the man remained silent for 5 years. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the back wall of the cell as if he was waiting for something to come out of it. And it did. Last week he started laughing, loudly, out of nowhere. The next day, I cried, on my knees. Then he would bang his head against the wall and say, "Speak softer, speak softer." No one knew who he was talking to. They only knew that for him, this presence was real. On the eve of the execution, he made an unusual request. Bring a priest, but don't let him pray out loud. He can hear. The sentence created a strange discomfort, as if it were a warning. Who was this he? And why would a prayer, said out loud, awaken something? The priest was called. He arrived but didn't go in. He said he preferred to pray outside. Hours later, the convict was found lying on the floor with his eyes closed as if he were at peace, but with his hand flat against the wall and his nails pulled out one by one. These episodes are not isolated. What is intriguing is the repetition of the same patterns in different prisons, in opposing cultures, in languages that do not overlap. Trapped talking to the invisible. But the tone of the conversations changes. It's not always the same. Some whisper as if they were negotiating. Others plead as if they had realized something too late. And there are those who laugh. But it is not a human laugh. It is dry, hollow, strange. A laugh that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who hears it, even on the other side of the wall. There's something about these last few days, as if the closer they get to the end, the closer they're getting to some hidden truth. And this truth seems to have form. There are reports of inmates pointing to the same corners. They say they see the same silhouette. And when you try to draw what they describe, the lines are similar. An elongated shadow, no face, but with eyes. Eyes that, according to them, know everything. There is an emotional pattern as well. First comes the restlessness, then voluntary isolation. Next, the conversation phase, where they talk to someone only they can see. And finally, the delivery, the silent phase, from the void. As if they knew there was no point in resisting any longer, as if the one listening was already inside. Prison psychologists have tried to explain it as a hallucination caused by sensory deprivation. But what if it isn't? What if this final connection is precisely what many religions call the farewell of the soul, not in the poetic sense, but in the literal sense, like a real-time transition, a contact, an exchange? The fact is, in all these cases, they knew they were talking to something that was listening to them. They didn't scream. They didn't scream. They whispered, like someone who respects or fears. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because some of these men describe details they could not possibly have known. They mentioned names, places, and even secrets of other inmates, information that was never released, as if this presence was whispering things in his ears, as if she had access to the backstage of the human mind, or worse, to files that no one should touch. There is one private recording never shown to the public. A convict was talking to himself in the early hours of the morning. The security camera captured the audio. He said, "You showed me what's on the other side. I know why they scream before they die. It's not fear, it's regret, because there's no more excuse." This excerpt was removed from the official archive, but one of the technicians kept a copy. He said that night, he heard a sound after the speech, something that was not human, nor animal. The tape was given to a scholar of low-frequency sounds. Preliminary analysis revealed a frequency that resonated at 17 Hz, known as the phantom frequency. It is the same one that can biologically generate the sensation of presence. Coincidence? Maybe. But why does it only appear in contexts of death? Why only in condemning environments? And why did so many of these men, even without access to technology or education, seem to understand intuitively that there was something watching them? These questions open another door, and what's behind it? It may not be the end, but the beginning of a new prison. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. Let's see who is really ready to continue. Because what comes now goes too deep to come back. The cameras didn't blink. Time seemed to stand still inside that cell, an environment built with bricks, bars, and concrete, but which held something that was not made of matter. One of the guards, with 17 years of experience on death row, trembled as he recounted what he saw that night. He said he went on patrol as he always did, flashlight in hand, prisoner file in his pocket, but as he passed that particular cell, the air changed. Cold. A cold that didn't come from the ventilation system. It was internal. A frozen emptiness that could not be explained. The prisoner, A man who had not spoken in days sat completely still, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Dilated pupils, slow, almost imperceptible breathing. It wasn't just silence, it was absence, as if he was no longer there. But something had remained in his place. That's what the guard wrote in the report. A detail that superiors later ordered to be erased. But he never forgot. Because that morning didn't end like all the others. Hours later, when they returned to check on the prisoner, he was standing, up, leaning against the back wall, still looking up. The cell light flickered, a recurring electrical fault, but that night, it flickered rhythmically. 3 blinks, a break, 2 blinks, another pause, and it started again, like a code. And he seemed to accompany each interval with a slight movement of his fingers. The technicians inspected everything the next day. No defects detected, no system failure, no reason for the air to be so cold in that part of the ward. But this always happened to the same people. It wasn't with all the prisoners. It was with those who no longer spoke, those who murmured in the dark, those who, before dying, asked not to sleep alone. A maintenance worker who rarely dealt directly with the inmates needed to replace one of the motion sensors. He rushed into the wing. He knew it was dangerous to stay there for too long, but when he passed one of the cells, he froze. The inmate was lying down. His eyes were open. He was smiling, but not at him. He was smiling at the corner of the cell, where there was nothing, absolutely nothing. The technician froze. He thought he could hear whispers, but no sound came from the speakers. No one was talking. Still, one phrase stuck in his head for days. You can't erase what's already been marked. These things were called early shift hallucinations. That's what the bosses called them. Accumulated fatigue, emotional stress. But those who worked there knew. The cell changed, the stare, the cold. It was all part of a pattern, a cycle, something that kept coming back. That grew as time passed and the execution approached. A prison psychologist who was monitoring the prisoners during their final days tried to address the phenomenon in more depth. She questioned their stories and analyzed their behavior. But she also began to notice small breaks in the logic of their daily lives. Inmates who knew things that no one else had told them. Comments on thoughts that she herself had had hours before but never verbalized. One night, after talking to one of the quietest inmates in the block, she dropped a note on the floor as she left. It read, "You saw what he wanted to show you. Now he sees you too." She resigned a week later. He did not give an interview. He didn't leave a letter. But his personal diary was found months later in another institution, with the following sentence repeated dozens of times on the last pages. The walls listen, the floor remembers, the cell breathes. In extreme cases, the reports reached external authorities. But they were hushed up. No institution admits that its prisons have memories. But what is frightening is this: the reports are not about the living. They are about what remains. About what remains in the cell even after the prisoner is executed, as if part of him refused to go. And this part, this psychic remainder, this emotional trace, contaminated the space. One of the chaplains who was overseeing the last rites reported something that no one could explain. On his last visit to a prisoner convicted of triple homicide, he was greeted with a cutting phrase, "You don't need prayers today. He has already absolved me." When the chaplain asked who he was, the prisoner simply pointed to the door with a calm smile. But there was no one there. No shadow, no figure, only the air, heavy, as if he had a body, but it was invisible. These moments have a profound impact on the way we understand guilt, remorse, and the presence of that which cannot be explained with reason. It is as if crimes do not end in prison, as if part of the violence remains alive, moving through the cracks, looking back, and perhaps waiting. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there are records not only of abnormal behavior, but of physical transformations in those who spent too much time near these cells, guards who aged suddenly, technicians who developed phobias of the dark, and most curiously, reports of shared dreams. Yes, you heard right. The same dreams, the same content, the same scenario, the same face. This happened to 4 professionals who had never met before. And they all described the same man, tall, thin, in a black suit, who looked you in the eye and said, "It's not you who observes, it's he who lets you see." These dreams arose after contact with a specific cell, the one where the inmate spent the last 11 days before his execution, the same one who, the night before his death, asked for the mirror to be removed from the cell because someone was walking through it. The mirror was removed, but no one knows where it ended up. The hidden truth that no one wants to admit is that there are spaces that absorb pain, guilt, madness, and they pay it back with interest. Places that, once touched, never leave us. And death row has plenty of those. Many cells, many brands, many voices that still echo when the light goes out. Write it down. That makes sense to me. If you also feel that there is more behind bars than justice can see. What makes a man of faith silent? It's not sin, it's not death, it's not even repentance. But what was seen there did not fit into any doctrine. Experienced priests, pastors with decades of pulpit experience, chaplains accustomed to torn confessions, crying blasphemies last minute, please, all of them. Mute. One of them entered the cell. He was accompanied. He was holding a crucifix and a book. He didn't even look at them on the way. He went through the armored door. 5 minutes later, he came out, trembling, eyes wide, didn't say a single prayer. One of the prison staff who was watching via security camera reported he didn't go there to convert. He went there to understand. But the attempt was costly. The report contained only one line. Priest X dismissed for psychological health reasons. But anyone who knew him knew. It wasn't mental fragility. It was something else. That's what he saw, or what he saw through it. Another clergyman, a Presbyterian pastor who used to comfort inmates before execution, took permanent leave. After that case, before leaving, he left a note in the chaplain's closet. It wasn't psychological. It was real. It was there. What would that be? The prisoner himself didn't say it, but he reacted. He reacted as if he wasn't alone. Hours before his execution, he whispered incomprehensible words. He stared at the ceiling as if something was moving above the cameras. And when the priest approached, he smiled. But it wasn't a smile of redemption. It was as if he was mocking. As if he already knew that, deep down, no one there would be able to help him. The cell where he was held remained empty for weeks after the execution. The guards refused to enter. One of them commented, off the record, "There are places that remain marked, like a camp after the war. There is nothing left, but the air still tastes." The director of the special wing tried to normalize the reports. He said it was a collective outbreak, fueled by the tension and emotional weight of the case. But anyone who has seen it up close knows, a mass outburst does not move objects. It does not turn off cameras. It does not knock down crucifixes fixed to the wall. The most curious thing is that, even among religious people, there were disagreements. One of the chaplains, a veteran, said that the condemned man was just another lost man. Another, young, new, to the system, said in a low voice, he wasn't possessed. He was conscious. And that sentence made everything even more intense, because if he was conscious, then every gesture, every word said there was decided. There was no demonic voice. There was no foam on the lips, but there was a lucidity, sharp, cruel, as if he were at peace with the abyss itself. This part of the journey raises something uncomfortable. Are there things that even faith cannot directly confront? Are there places inside where not even light wants to enter? The religious, people who remained silent may have understood something that words cannot translate, a hidden truth that does not fit into a sermon, a silent transformation. that did not come from above but from within. And this kind of transformation does not illuminate. It burns. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the way the convicted person reacted in the last 24 hours says more about him than the years of trial, evidence, or testimony. What happened between the walls, when the clock started counting the final minutes, it revealed a part of the human mind that almost no one is prepared to face. Right there, I'm on this journey too, and pay attention, because from now on things start to get out of control. And it was right there, in the heavy silence that precedes the fall, that the signs began. The cell camera, active 24 hours a day, captured a moment that should never have happened. 2:47 in the morning, the condemned man looks up, staring at the ceiling, eerie, but it was no ordinary laugh. It was a warning of someone who knew the time had come. 3 seconds later, the audio disappears. Only his image remained motionless, listening, something that no one else could hear. It was at that moment that something changed. Those who watched the recording described the same thing, a tightness in the chest, nausea, chills, as if the cell had absorbed more than one body. As if something had gotten stuck there. This video is not just about a crime, it's about what stays later, what sticks to the wall, what follows you home. Few people go all the way. But whoever goes doesn't come out the same. If this touched anything inside you, if this story touched you in a way you can't explain, then connect. Subscribe. Because whoever follows it to the end receives pieces that are nowhere to be found. Do you feel like there's something bigger behind all this? So stay. The ending is not just a revelation, it's transformation. And when he arrives, silence will say more than any words. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when a convict says he heard his name whispered in the dark, not by a guard, not by another prisoner, but by something he described as faceless but with eyes, we understand that the reality in there does not obey the same rules that we know out here. One of the most disturbing records came from a prisoner in total isolation. 30 days without human contact. No visitors, no conversation, no distractions. Just him, the cold walls, and his own mind. On the 22nd day, he began to write. Sometimes with a trembling hand, sometimes with a handwriting that was too calm. What caught his attention wasn't the content, it was the frequency. He wrote the same name, always the same, page after page. A name that no one there knew, until someone did some research and discovered that the same name appeared in forbidden medieval grimoires, associated with invocation and mind control rituals. And the strangest thing, several other prisoners, in different parts of the country, at different times, mentioned this same name, without ever having met, without ever having read what the others wrote, as if they were touched by the same frequency, as if something had crossed time and the concrete to present itself. One of these men, a convicted murderer for a brutal crime, wrote in a letter that for 3 nights in a row this entity appeared in the corner of his cell, always in the same spot, always at the same time. It didn't say anything, it just watched. But on the 4th night, it spoke, with a voice that the prisoner described as dry, ancient, and familiar as a childhood nightmare. And that was the night that everything changed. The prisoner stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He just sat there, staring at the floor, as if he were listening to a continuous conversation that no one else could hear. Days later, he pulled out his own fingernail with his teeth. He wrote a sentence on the ground in blood that no one was able to fully translate. But one word kept repeating itself: belonging. When asked what that meant, he said something the prison psychologists never forgot. He said, "I was chosen, that I was born with the mark, and that my mother knew." This kind of talk at first glance seems like delirium. But what about when the pattern repeats itself? What about when specific names crop up in different states, different penitentiaries and different mouths, but all describing the same high-pitched laugh, the same metallic smell in the air, the same voice that seems to echo from both inside and outside at the same time. In a prison in the South, a 23-year-old man who had never had contact with occult texts drew symbols on the wall that were later identified by an anthropologist as being linked to an African sect that had been extinct for over 300 years. Precise details, lines that could never have come from the imagination of someone without access to this kind of knowledge. When asked how he learned that, he replied, "He showed me, while I was sleeping." Another prisoner, this one on death row, wrote a single sentence on the wall before his execution. "He called me by my full name, and he laughed at my mother." None of the prison guards understood the weight of this until the camera footage revealed the man standing in the corner of the cell crying, silently, and then smiling, as if he had accepted something, as if he had made a deal. Internal investigations have suggested schizophrenia, hallucinations from isolation, cognitive decline due to extreme confinement, but the records don't add up. The timeline of symptoms doesn't match the usual pattern. And the names, those names keep coming up. In letters, in scribbles, in whispers picked up on distorted audio in the wee hours of the morning. Now, if you think about it, it doesn't seem like a simple mental health issue anymore. There's something behind the scenes, a hidden truth, camouflaged under layers of diagnosis and bureaucratic paperwork, as if each cell carries an echo, an ancient vibration, which awakens something dormant in those who enter there with a fractured soul. Because many of these men had no history of delirium, but after crossing the gates of that prison, they began to listen. Let's see, to respond, to be appointed, and names have power. When you name, you recognize. When you recognize, you open the door. And when that door opens, it's not just you looking out. There's something looking back. Comment here. I saw the pattern if this part of the story sparks something in you. Because there's more. Much more. And the next revelation goes beyond the cell. And then came the moment when eyes speak louder than any scream. Death row is silent, but before the injection, there is something in the faces that doesn't lie. It's not just fear. It's not just regret. It's like they see something no one else sees. Looks lost in the void. Dilated pupils as if they were seeing another dimension, a presence that cannot be explained with words. Some looked away, as if to escape a vision that haunted them to the end. Others stared fixedly at the ceiling, or a specific spot on the wall, as if someone was waiting there. Someone only they could see. A prison guard who worked on executions for 17 years said there was a pattern. In the seconds before the execution, the look in his eyes changed, drastically, from human to abyss. He used that word, abyss, as if something was being ripped out from inside, a presence that only manifests itself when death approaches. A figure behind the curtain, a coldness that is impossible to explain, even in an air-conditioned room. There was a prisoner who refused to be blindfolded. He asked to face forward. He said that if he turned his back, he would get closer, and that looking straight ahead, it would hurt less. No one understood what he meant, but his expression wasn't one of insanity. It was one of someone who knew exactly what he was talking about. The scariest part? A second before the needle pierced his skin, he whispered, "There you are, again." And he smiled. Not a smile of peace, a smile of defeat, of someone who knew there was nowhere left to run. Another asked to postpone the execution for 10 minutes. Only 10. He said he had to wait for him to leave. They asked who it was. He replied, "The thing that arrived last night and never left the corner of my room." The officer said there was no corner in his room. It was a square cell, well lit with no shadows. But the inmate insisted. He pointed his finger, his hand shaking as if he saw something glued to the wall, climbing, peering, smiling. And these were not isolated cases. In more than a dozen executions, the same behavior was reported. The look before the needle, the reaction to something invisible, the refusal to turn away, the certainty that they would be welcomed. not by nothing, but by someone. Someone who was waiting for this moment. And then comes the question that no one likes to ask out loud. What exactly were they seeing? Because when a man is about to die, he has nothing left to lose. He doesn't need to impress, manipulate, or convince. If he says there's someone there, it's because for him, that presence is more real than the chair he's tied to. And the most disturbing thing? Some of these descriptions coincide. Same gestures, same words, same smell. Yes, I smell. One inmate said that the night before the execution, his room was filled with an odor he described as burning iron and raw meat. She said she tried to sleep on her stomach, but something was breathing on the back of her neck. Something that had known his full name since he was 7. Something that wasn't part of a delusion, but a truth that was hidden until he was about to cross over. Another mentioned a sound, serious, like a frequency that no one else heard, but that made your bones vibrate. He said it started ringing every night, always at 3:17 a.m., always at this time. And when the guards checked, nothing was found. But his eyes were different, as if something had gone in and never come out again. And what is most frightening is that some of these men never had a history of delusions or psychosis, nor substance abuse. They were evaluated by psychiatric teams and closely monitored. And yet, when the end approached, something changed. It's as if there's a moment where the barrier between this world and the other becomes porous, and those on the threshold see, feel, know. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because in some of these cases the experience went beyond vision. It wasn't just what they saw. It was what answered when they spoke. There were reports of inmates talking to themselves, yes, but when they were listened to carefully, the pauses were consistent with responses, as if there were actually an exchange taking place. Complete sentences, arguments, negotiations, a kind of pact. And the most chilling thing? Some of them changed completely after these talks. One man who cried every day asking for forgiveness suddenly became calm, cold, without fear of death. He simply said, he accepted, now it will be quick. On the day of his execution, he died without trembling, without blinking, without a final word, as if he was already empty. What did he exchange? What did he give? Maybe it's not just about seeing. Maybe some go further. They listen, they talk, they make deals. And that raises a disturbing question that no one wants to face. What exists at the exact point where life ends and what lies on the other side begins? Could these fixed eyes, these silent shivers and these words thrown into the wind be signs that there is a hidden backdrop to death? Something that is not light, nor peace, but presence, intelligence. Something that watches us until the last second and then finally shows itself. Right there. I'm on this journey too, because what comes after that goes even deeper. In the east wing of Block C, there was a cell forgotten by the eyes of the press, but never by the ears of the night guards. Cell 9B. The number whispered in the corridors like a warning that no one said out loud. The file of the man imprisoned there said little. Heinous crime, permanent isolation, zero contact with other inmates. But what really kept that door locked, night after night, went far beyond what was written on paper. It all started with a sound that none of the security microphones picked up completely, but which echoed off the walls like a wave passing through concrete. Those who made the solitary midnight rounds described it as something like a distorted prayer, in a language that was not Latin, nor Germanic, nor even human. A language that seemed to have more intent than meaning. They were not words to be understood, they were words to provoke. The convict in 9B did not sleep. His eyes, according to the few who dared to peek through the small opening in the door, remained open even in the pitch darkness. And when he spoke, he did not speak to anyone visible. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not cry. He begged. In the first week, a new officer, unaware of the implicit warnings, decided to listen. He approached the cell with the recorder on and recorded something that changed his life forever. At first, it was just that guttural, repetitive whisper. But 3 minutes and 12 seconds into the recording, the frequency changed. The voice became deeper, closer, as if something had started talking to him. The file was listened to by other members of the team, and almost all of them requested a transfer in the following weeks. The audio, kept confidential, ends with a dry scream. It is not a cry for help. It is an acknowledgement. He's in. He's in. The question that haunts those who survived that shift to this day is, who got in? Or what? There was no one inside, not a single person. But the prisoner's behavior had changed drastically since that morning. He stopped walking in circles. He began to stand still for hours, staring at the opposite wall, his neck twisted at an angle that was impossible to maintain without pain. A forensic doctor, on a technical visit for a psychological evaluation, stayed with him for only 8 minutes. She left in silence. And shortly after, she left the profession. In her report, she wrote only 2 words: total absence. And she did not explain. That cell, according to internal documents leaked years later, was permanently sealed after a series of unexplained events involving electrical failures, missing files, and a series of unexpected resignations among the security team. No official explanation was given, but the number 9B was removed from the prison map and replaced with a concrete wall. To this day, there are those who say that on certain nights, when the wind blows in the direction of the old block, it is possible to hear something coming from inside this wall. A long murmur, cyclical, almost like a countdown. And no matter how much time passes, the countdown continues. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a sinister pattern among inmates who, when they are about to die, claim to have heard the same thing. A presence, a shapeless shadow, a he who is never named but is always feared. In a Texas prison, a man named Elijah, convicted of triple homicide, spent the last 5 days of his life writing symbols in blood on the tiles of his cell. The team thought it was just ritualistic madness. But one of the nurses, born in Haiti, recognized the features. He said that it was a passing invocation, something to prepare the soul for a visitor. Elijah didn't speak for the last 2 days. He just smiled. Not with joy, with acceptance, as if he already knew what was coming. His last look before the lethal injection was at the ceiling, and seconds before his vital signs ceased, his eyes slowly moved to the left corner of the room, as if he was following something invisible with his gaze. And then there is the question that no one on death row wants to hear. What do some prisoners see that no one else sees? Is it delusion? Guilt? Or is there something real there, lurking on the threshold between life and nothingness? This is not a theory. These are cross-reports in different states with inmates who have never met, but all describing similar sensations: a cold that has no origin, a smell of rust in the air, a feeling of being watched even when alone. There are records of people who gave up their sentence of appeal just to not have to spend another day feeling that way. Prisoners who begged to be executed soon, not for justice, but to escape what was following them in the dark. In 1998, the Walter Reeves case exploded in criminal courts due to a bizarre detail. On the day of the execution, security cameras captured an electrical failure that lasted exactly 66 seconds. When the image returned, Walter was already dead. The problem? The injection had not yet been administered, and the heart monitors indicated sudden cardiac arrest with no identifiable cause. The report? A massive attack of unknown origin. But what caught the attention was what the technicians found in the recording system. The 66 seconds of failure were not empty. There was a strange noise in it, a sound that seemed to come from inside the room itself. They amplified it. They reconstructed it. And in the background, way in the background, there was a whisper. Now he's mine. Comment. This makes sense to me. Now let me show you something that almost no one dares to investigate. Death row is not just a place where time seems to stand still. There, the boundary between the end and what comes next is blurred into heavy, suffocating shadows. And within these cold walls lives the story of a man who defied death itself. And death, in response, gave him a warning. His name was Marcus Elliott, convicted of triple murder in 2003 in the state of Louisiana. The execution date had been set for months. Everything ready. Witnesses, protocols, cameras, medical team. But what happened that night forever changed the perception of what can and cannot be controlled in a system as rigid as capital punishment. The injection was administered. The poison began its silent course through his body. The monitors showed his heart slowing, his breathing slowing. But then, something unexpected. For almost 7 minutes, Marcus fought against the silence of death. His breathing was short, and between desperate gasps he murmured in a trembling, barely audible voice, words that froze the staff and everyone watching on the prison's closed TV. He wants more. He said he's not done yet. It wasn't a plea for clemency. It wasn't a confession. It was a threat. The cameras captured his body arched, eyes open, fixed on a blank spot that no one else could see. His heartbeat stopped. Silence returned. The silence that brought no peace but an unsettling feeling, as if something had been left behind, something that could not simply be ended with the man's death. This episode was not just a medical error or a technical problem. It has gone down as the most puzzling blunder in the history of American executions. The official report suggests that the mixture of sedatives used may have caused an unexpected reaction, but what the guards and doctors saw, heard, and felt goes far beyond science. What was pulsing in Marcus's body that night? Who is this him who insists on prolonging the torment? In the shadows of the prison system, this phrase has become a silent mantra. Inmates, guards, lawyers, all affected by the idea that there is a force that does not accept easy deals, that is not content with the simple and linear end of life. A force that exacts a high price, that does not forgive. There is a growing pattern when we hear stories like this. Stories of the condemned who in their final moments reveal a dark connection to something that transcends earthly existence, something that tests the mentality of those on the brink. This hidden truth defies all rationality. Marcus wasn't the first, and he probably won't be the last. His case opened the door to uncomfortable questions. How far does fear go? What is the impact of this invisible presence on the journey of those who walk towards the end? The behind the scenes of these fatal moments are full of stories that almost never break the official silence. Witnesses speak of chills that run through their skin, of shadows that move without explanation, of voices that whisper promises or threats that no one can hear except the condemned. And what we see in fragmented accounts is a profound transformation. In those who face this empty gaze, as if by facing this him, something inside them broke forever, leaving only a surrendered body, but a mind that will never be the same again. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because this connection between the announced end and what escapes human perception is linked to decisions that go beyond punishment, justice, or life itself. It is in the realm of that which few dare to investigate, the impact of existential fear on behavior, the psychological journey of the condemned, and the revelations that these experiences bring about the fragility of the mind in the face of the unknown. What we learn about this silent struggle is not in law books or medical reports. It is in the blank expressions in the eyes of those who have seen the invisible. It is in the deafening silence that follows a botched execution. The stories do not end with death. They start there. The body may have been handed over to forensic medicine, but the mind, the spirit, whatever you call it, continues to face a mystery that defies time. In that cell that night, what happened to Marcus opened a fissure in our understanding of the boundary between life and death. A crack where fear, pain, and mystery intertwine in a cruel and eternal dance. What if what we hear in the last words of a condemned man is just the tip of an iceberg of buried truths? Comment. I'm on this journey too. They were there, trapped, in the same suffocating space, all condemned to eternal silence. But what united those faces marked by fear, silent tears, and deep regret was not only the final fate that awaited them. It was something darker, a shadow that walked among them, invisible to most but all too clear to those who had already faced the abyss. An absolute, visceral fear. Not the simple fear of death, but the terror that arises when one feels the weight of the final judgment. That moment when one can no longer hide anything, when the truth reveals itself naked, raw, stripped of any lie or justification. They felt it pulsing in the air in every breath they still took, as if a cold, implacable presence was watching them, waiting for the exact moment to claim what was due to it. It wasn't just the awareness of one's own actions, of the blood spilled, of the dreams destroyed. It was the perception of something that surpassed human understanding, something that no one dares to name, but that settles in the back of the mind, infiltrates the deepest thoughts, makes the heart race for no apparent reason, and creates a silence so heavy that it can almost be touched. Regret. That belated feeling that comes when life is already fading away, when the time to right mistakes is just a cruel joke. They tried, but the memory of the acts they had committed, the betrayal, the violence, the despair, came like a dagger, piercing every memory and corroding their souls. This regret did not save them. It was like a prison within a prison, a sentence that was being fulfilled with every passing second. And, in the middle of it all, that presence. A figure that cannot be seen, but can be felt. A heavy, cold energy that escapes human eyes but makes the blood run cold and the skin crawl. Those who went through it tried to explain, but words were never enough to describe what they were experiencing. "It's hell," some whispered, their faces pale and their hands shaking. Others denied it, pretended not to feel it, but they couldn't hide their wide eyes, trapped in a void that only they could see. What happens when this presence chooses you? When it grabs hold of your mind, invades your dreams, and turns your reality into a constant nightmare? No one knows for sure. What is certain is that no one emerges unscathed. What if all this is real? What if this invisible hell is already lurking, waiting for the last breath, the final moment to make its claim? This thought is not just a dark hypothesis. It is a hidden truth that echoes behind the scenes of prisons, in the whispered conversations between guards, in the erased accounts of forensic psychologists. It is the impact of a journey that goes far beyond the physical body, that touches the essence of being, that challenges every mentality built to support the idea of death. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding this presence and its meaning can change the way we see our own existence, the decisions we make, and what really remains after our last breath. The revelations that emerge from these final moments are not just macabre stories to scare the curious. They are fragments of a parallel reality, a dark side of the truth that few dare to face. They intertwine the psychology of fear, the impact of choices, and a radical transformation that occurs in seconds, when everything seems lost, but something inside still fights to survive. It is at this point that the judgment ceases to be merely human and becomes a confrontation with forces we do not understand. A duel between light and darkness that takes place in the silence of condemned souls. And this internal battle, full of pain and mystery, reflects what is most profound in the human condition: the desperate search for redemption, the urgent need for forgiveness, and the paralyzing fear of never being freed. They saw hell. What about you? Comment. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you refuses to accept the easy versions. You feel like there's more. Between the lines, in the silences, in the details that most people ignore. This content is not for everyone. It was made for restless minds, souls that feel the weight of the unsaid, people who don't look away, who stare, who want to understand. If this journey has opened something inside you, An ancient void, a forgotten memory, a shiver that has no explanation. So leave your mark in the comments with, "I'm with you until the end." It's more than a sentence. It's confirmation that this search is shared, that you also feel that there is something here that has not yet been fully revealed. And if any part of this story touched you, if something reverberated inside there, a simple like shows that this connection is real. It's an exchange, a silent surrender, a bridge between you and those who also have questions. There is a video here on the side that continues this dive, but it goes deeper, darker, closer to the truth that almost no one has the courage to hear. Click and come. The next piece of the puzzle is already waiting for you, and what comes after that can change the way you see everything.